Hi there, Neil Spacey here, Deputy Fire Chief. Giving a quick update on the project. On August 28th, the Fire Station Building Committee met, and at that meeting they discussed and voted on the final dollar figure for the fire station project. That number that they chose will now go forward to the Select Board at their September 9th meeting to be voted on to put on to the warrant article, which will then be voted on at the special town meeting on October 7th. In an effort to make it easier for citizens to access the relevant information to the price of the station, the following video has segmented out all the cost discussions from that meeting that the Fire Station Building Committee recently had. Please note that there are a few visuals that have been added that were not in the original meeting. And that's just to help everybody understand the context of what's being discussed. If you'd like to watch the full video of the whole meeting, which we recommend you do, you can go to the website below and it'll give you access. The gentleman at the table in the video doing most of the speaking is Tim Alex. He works for Collier's Project Leaders, who is the owner's project manager hired by the town. In summary, the OPM is a subject matter expert in managing municipal construction projects. They work with, on behalf of, and advocates for the town during the design project and when determining costs. During construction, the OPM oversees the actual construction of the project as well to ensure that the construction is done correctly to the design and oversees the expenses for the project. The two women next to Tim are Amy Dunlap and Janet Slamenda, who are the principal architects from the firm HKT Architects, who were hired by the town to design the project. Some of the segments that you'll see in the video include a presentation on the construction documents phase.
Who's handling that one?
That would be me. So I passed around a two-page handout, and the slide that you have here is just kind of giving you the headings. And then I really just wanted to dive down to the bottom of it. And really this was our kind of high and low range that we've been talking about since February. And if you look at the bottom or page 2 of this handout or on the slide, on the left, you can see our range was 42.3 million to 49.1 million. That was where we originally started back in February. You know, 42 to 43 to roughly $50 million project. And as we've added things and there's been decisions made on scope, added in geothermal, made some decisions on the retaining wall and so forth, the numbers have shifted a little bit, but we've been able to reduce that range. It was a pretty big range when we started. So as we went through and at schematic design, and after we made some decisions on the geothermal, you can see we were at 43.6 million to 46.4. So the range has gotten a little bit tighter. And then when we got to the design development, and we had put in some costs that we hadn't been carrying, which was in that original $3.5 million initial appropriation, which is we were carrying going forward. What we didn't have is the costs for any of the site cleanup or the purchase of the site. So those have been added into the project budget. And so at that point, we were at the 44.3 to 46.9. So again, still within that original range, but it's just been narrowing and it's kind of going up and down, bouncing around in there. But now that we got to the construction document phase, the documents are further along. Our estimators have a little bit more to look at and be able to put numbers to than versus just putting a contingency. They know there's something that's going to get designed to fill that spot, but they don't know what it is yet. So now that we're there, and based on having the entire scope of work that had been done and what we anticipate, we come up with a recommended budget to go forward with of a total of 44.863 as a total project budget. And then obviously, if you want to go to the next slide. So the summary of that is, you know, we have the building construction itself. We have, again, the FF&E, which is the various loose furnishings that are within the building. We have the fees and expenses. That's also where we're carrying the cost of the purchase of the property. Then we have contingency for construction, and so that equals that $44,863,992. And then we have the original appropriation of $3.499 million, so you back that out, and so what we would need to go for an additional appropriation would be the $41,364,992. But I know there's a lot of information here, and I provided that so you have a chance to be able to look at it, but the takeaway from this is that we've been maintaining this range in this $45 million, roughly $45 million project cost since February, since we started talking about values from the original schematic design estimate. So there's been a lot of changes along the way, but we've maintained that cost. We haven't gone up, we haven't gone down, we've stayed right in the middle of that range. So that's a lot of credit to the design team for making those documents clear so that the estimators, as they go through it, they can have some pretty tight numbers. Because I don't have the estimate reconciliation that we just went through the 50% set, but they were within
I have the numbers.
well, they were within like $200,000 or 100 and.
200 PNC was 33,277,997, and TCI was 33,552,628. So 200,000 is pretty.
I sat through that reconciliation again, which was another enjoyable time. But it's just, I was amazed at how close at the end I went, you're that close together? Yeah, but their discussions were interesting to see. Some of them, because one cost estimator puts something in this section, another one puts it in this section, and they can't find it in each. Oh, here it is. It was just really interesting when I watching the whole thing. Long time, but it was interesting.
Yeah, I'm glad they do that work and not me.
Yeah.
But by going through that, and you have two separate teams looking at these documents, that's what's going to happen when we go out to bid. We're going to have separate contractors looking at it. And we're not expecting the numbers to come in exactly the same. But the fact that they came in as close as they did means that they're looking at, the documents are clear, and they're taking away the same quantities of materials, and they may carry a different number for the actual cost per pound or per square foot, but they're seeing the scope of the project the same, and that's what's really important. So hopefully on bid day, again, we have a nice tight cluster of bids that come in.
Explaining what 50% cost documents means and how they relate to the cost.
Sure, and we get caught in that trap a lot where we're throwing around a lot of jargon and we forget that we're not talking to the people in the next cubicle over in our office, that we're talking to people who don't do this every day. So as you go through the design process, and if I'm missing anything, please jump in, but the documents or schematic design, it's very loose. Is this feasible to build on this site? What size would the building be? And the pricing that gets attributed to that level of design is maybe just a square footage cost. There's no real detail there. And then you go through, further that up, and you get into design development. You're really kind of fine-tuning the floor plan and some of those things, but you're not getting what equipment is going in, and maybe some of the things you don't really have the structural laid out yet, and there's still maybe some questions that the engineers are trying to work through. Maybe the mechanical system, are we doing forced hot air? Are we doing a radiant floor? Those types of things. And so as you get into the construction documents, that's where you're really building in those details so that somebody can take those documents and actually build from, not just design and come up with the plan and a schematic. They actually have to be able to go out to bid. And so that process, we have a certain time period that's going to take. And as they're going from their milestone at design development and then the end of construction documents, you're about halfway through getting all that detail really fine-tuned and established. So you're still maybe building out your specifications, you're still maybe putting some final details in, but you know what the structural system is, you know what the mechanical system is. There's some equipment that maybe, we need to carry something for that. We don't have it fully designed yet. And that's where our pricing contingency comes in. So in the beginning of design, you have maybe a 10% pricing contingency because you don't really know those details. And the designer or the estimators know, well, something's going to go there. We just don't know exactly what. So we give it a number to carry a placeholder for it. And as we go through and get to the end, now we have maybe a 2% or 2.5%. 3% design contingency to cover those final details that are going to get worked out between now and going out to bid. So it's not that there's half the building is done, it's really the whole thing is done, it's just getting those final details.
And the only other thing I'd like you to clarify, and again, we've all heard it a zillion times, but when I look at this, I see total construction cost is $33,415,000. Why is the total price 44? So could you talk about the hard cost versus the soft cost and what is what?
Yeah, so the contractor would come in with a bid, and hopefully their bid comes in at 33 million or lower. And that's what the contractors are responsible for. But there's a lot of other parts and pieces of the project. So furniture, fixtures, and equipment, all the furniture that goes into the building. You know, the loose stuff, if you were to be able to shake the building, and what fell out of it is the FF&E.
That's a good way to put that. I didn't think I like that one.
So, it's the admin furniture, it's the sleeping quarters, the beds and the lockers and some of those types of things that might be shelving and to be able to hang your gear or you know, put the hoses on or different types of items. And then there's the cost of designing the project for the architect, for their engineers and sub-consultants, for the OPM, for me. And any of the other costs that may come up along the way. So we have a legal line item in the budget for bond costs or, you know, some of those types of costs that get applied to the project. So everything that the town would have to spend for the project should be included within our budget. And that's what that fees and expenses kind of carries. And contingency, and this is construction and owner's contingency, which is a little different than our design contingency, which is really built into that 33 million of cost of what a contractor would bid. The contingency is for is construction, those unknowns, those things that may come up that you're digging in the ground and you find something you weren't expecting. Or just, you know, this isn't a mass-produced Chevy that they do thousands of them a day. This is, you know, it's a one-of-a-kind building, and sometimes there's things that didn't quite go as expected or didn't quite fit together the way you were expecting, and there's a cost to put that together. Something maybe got missed, and you would, if it had been included, you would have had to increase your cost of construction of your bid, but if it's not there, we need to be able to pay for it somehow. So that's what contingency is typically used for. Or for additional design for, you know what, we want to add this type of system, and we didn't think of it before, but we want to add it. And so owner's project would cover that, any kind of design fees that might be associated with anything like that. And sometimes it's not just mistakes or errors or unknowns. Sometimes it's, you know, as you're moving through the project, there's something that comes up, you know, that's a better way to do it. It's the right thing to do. It makes sense. And so you have the money to be able to have some flexibility to be able to make some of those decisions. Certainly, we like to hold as much of that as we can until the very, very end, and because you don't know how construction is. But that's what the intent of those funds are. So everything below total estimated construction is what we classify as soft costs, and the construction would be the hard cost.
Some comments by the Select Board and Financial Planning representatives on the committee.
So, follow-on question, Tim. So, for purposes of financial planning and appropriations, in terms of what the town will be asking for at town meeting, is the 41,364.9, yes?
Yes.
I was going to ask the same question, because I need to bring that to my board to place that on the warrant. But
Comments related to max allowable spending and borrowing interest rates.
And this warrant article will read not to exceed, correct?
I would assume that's how the wording would be. Mitch, I never
Yeah,
saw
I
what
mean,
you guys
it will-
voted on.
Yeah, I mean, it will match, you know, it comes as a recommendation from Andy, which comes from the Department of
Right.
Revenue on how to ask for.
This is what you
exclusions.
appropriate, so what you
Yeah,
appropriate is what you can
yeah, it's an
spend.
appropriation for this.
There
Yeah.
is language in the financial planning report which says not to exceed that also.
We've heard so many people with the fear that it's just gonna keep going.
Yeah,
so.
it's no different. The way I look at it is, every year, I bring my budget, and the budget gets passed. And that's what I had to spend. Now, I can't exceed that. That's what was appropriated. The town has what was appropriated. That's what you're allowed to spend. It's no different with this project.
Yeah.
No, and I understand that, but
I know.
we need to make it clear to everyone that
Yeah.
it will not go higher than this.
Yes, they've been
It must
throwing,
go-
and you also have to, there's been a lot of people throwing $70 million around. So if you buy a house and you pay $300,000 for it, when you're done after 30 years, you paid more than 300. It's no different. You're buying something, you're paying interest on it.
Yeah, you appropriate the principal.
Correct. Yep.
And then we don't know what the interest will be, because we won't go out to bond for it for a little while.
That's correct.
And that's something that our finance director will sort out and look at different terms and there are a lot of different ways. There's much more flexibility in how you go out for a municipal bond than you do for a simple home loan. And they work with financial advisors to figure those things out. And when the time is right, we'll go for it with the least expensive way possible. The way that makes the most sense, given the financial outlook of the town, not only projects on the books now, but projects that we expect to be on the books later.
Discussions relevant to the fall special town meeting.
Now, I just want to talk a little bit about the town meeting process, and I hope my question is, we go to the floor with 41, 364, 992. And someone stands up and says, I want to cut 10 million off of that.
I mean, in theory, town meeting can approve that.
But that-
I hope they also approve money to redesign the building.
Because
we've designed it, that's the
That's my
cost of
point.
that design.
It's designed to this price.
Yeah.
You can't just stand up and cut 5 million or 10 million.
Right.
You can. It's like any town meeting. I've seen line items zeroed out.
Yeah.
But that is essentially does the same thing. It kills the project at that point.
Yeah.
Comments relative to if the project comes in over or under budget?
Came up to.
Yeah, and it's also important, and I know we all understand this, that just because the town appropriates 41,364,992 doesn't mean it can't come in at 40 million or 39 million or whatever, because Lincoln Street School's the best, my first year here, and Colliers was actually the OPM, and that came in $1 million under. So you don't know what's gonna happen, so you have to appropriate what you think, just like when I buy a fire truck. I ask for this much money, if I spend less, I turn it back. It just, yeah.
We're setting everything up to have the most competitive bid possible.
Exactly.
We're appropriating the money first so that hopefully more contractors will bid because they know it's a real project.
Yes.
Because a lot of contractors don't want to spend the real considerable time, because they have to do exactly what these cost estimators did and figure out how they're gonna bid. And so we see how much work that is. There are gonna be people that won't wanna do it unless they know it's a real project. So we're putting ourselves in the best position possible for it to be substantially less than that, but we won't know until, probably the early part of 2025, exactly what it will be. And then further refined, obviously, throughout the project. And I was gonna mention exactly the same thing. The most recent example we have is the Lincoln Street School project, and you guys were the OPM, so.
Yeah, that was
It
a
worked
great
out
project.
successfully.
We had a good team. Hopefully we can get some of the same team members on the contractor side. Again, we are out for pre-qualification, and it is worth highlighting that the people who submit for this pre-qualification, that's your bid pool. Somebody can't join later. So that's why we're spending a lot of time to reach out to these firms and make sure everybody's aware that this project is out there.
Discussion on renewable energy rebates.
The only other number we need to keep in mind, and it's not what's being voted on, but we need to keep in mind, is that 1.9 million, that rebate for the geothermal.
Yeah, I was gonna
So
ask
so it's important for the committee to keep that in mind, but this is the number that goes in front of the town meeting, but it's 1.9 million, I believe.
So I was gonna ask for a refinement on that, and I don't expect you to have that today. So with geothermal, there are really 3 rebates that I think we'll be getting. 2 are geothermal and 1 is the EV charges, which is a lot less money. With the EV, there's the state, which is a dollar amount based upon the tonnage capacity of the system. I don't remember the details, but it's not based on the dollar amount, it's based on the capacity of the system. On the assumption that the capacity has not changed from what was initially presented to us. It would be the same dollar amount, but it would be good for somebody, now that they've gone through and really designed it, did that change? And then the federal rebate is based on the cost of this. And I looked through here, and the cost is like all HVAC is combined, and not all of the HVAC is geothermal. So it would be, I think, very valuable to do a recap on, okay, what's the current cost estimate of the geothermal system, so that we can present to town meeting, based upon this cost estimate, what is the expected value of those rebates, so we can present that, because the cost estimate has changed since it was presented a few months ago, so I expect the rebate will have changed also. That's fair. And then on the EV chargers, just to take a look and make sure we're getting at least $50,000 back, which I think is the maximum per address rebate that you can get on EV chargers through.
No, one other thing.
Sure.
I apologize.
Okay, yeah.
I'm trying to do too many things. This number we're looking at includes the PV panels on the roof.
Oh, it does?
It does.
Okay,
Which number is that, Chief?
That number, 41,364, includes the PV panels on the roof.
we
It's
haven't,
not designed yet, so it's just a
Oh,
placeholder at
okay.
63.7 kilowatt,
Okay.
package, but they didn't decide.
All right.
The chief was there and said to include it, because they were doing so much.
Because of the
infrastructure.
pricing.
yeah.
And then-
I think, I'm hoping that eventually we get there, but the board hasn't.
Yep, no, the only reason I mentioned it is because you had mentioned the rebates for it.
And then that's a fourth rebate then to look at.
That's why,
Yep, I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay.
Well, and to that end, it might be good to have some data on operational savings.
Yeah.
If you do install them at the time of construction. That's something.
So would we be then, with this, making that part of the bid? Or is this still going to be something we do at the end?
Right now, we carried the number for the construction portion of that. And if the group was to decide that, you know what, we want to keep that in the project, then we can do an amendment with HKT to have a solar design.
Okay, so at this point, you're carrying the cost as if we were going to do it, but it's not being designed to be part of the bid documents?
Can't be, because you don't have the funding to do that right now, so
Right.
we'd have to wait till after November 5th.
Yeah.
And it's a specialty engineer,
Yeah.
so right now,
Okay.
the electrical engineer shows an area on his drawing for where they could be, and the cost estimators use that for an estimate.
Gotcha, okay,
So that's.
good.
And
Yeah,
just a reminder to everyone that the rest of the building is set up to receive the system.
Yes.
So part of the cost is inherent whether or not the panels are purchased.
Right, which is why
After the
they
fact.
went with carrying it, because they had to do so much infrastructure, and they were debating whether, how much to put in, and then, you don't do any, if you don't anticipate doing it for 5-10 years, then, that you could be designing for a system that doesn't exist anymore. And they decided the number was so low relatively, I don't remember the number exactly, I could probably,
it was fairly low. I was surprised.
like $250,000.
Yeah, it was like $260,000 or something.
I have to look it up, but, so they all agreed that it was worth putting it in for that amount of money.
And concluding with the committee vote on the recommended dollar amount to submit to the select board.
Is everyone ready, comfortable to make a vote? Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Moved.
I think it's a motion to request a budget of $41,364,992 from town meeting appropriation for the project. Second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Any other discussion?
You may want to just make the motion that you're adding to the additional to the original 3.4 for a total of 44.
All we need to worry about now is the appropriation.
For this one.
The 3.5 was appropriated a couple of years
Okay.
ago, so
Yeah,
that's,
I think that would muddy the waters.
Yeah. Maybe afraid that we'd be spending it again. So, motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? No. Unanimous.
So I hope you got something out of that video. And again, to watch the full meeting, you can go to the link below.